Welcome back to Chimera Miniatures, everybody. It is I, your host, Mr. Sean, and thank you for joining me for our first installment of The Good, the Bad, and the Ecchi, the review show where we look at the ecchi manga you love and try to answer the ultimate question. Is it actually good, or are you just really horny? If you would like a more in-depth version of how this is going to work, I do have a video linked in the description that came out before this video that does explain it in full. I did that so we can get right into today's video without me having to go over a more in-depth explanation. So for our first episode, I wanted to look at a title of which the anime version was actually my foray into the more, let's say, titillating side of anime and manga. Before randomly finding this show on Hulu while trying to find something to watch, I'll be honest, the majority of what I watched, because I watched anime well before I got into manga, was either simple slice of life or intense action. I really kind of veered away from things that were ecchi, so to speak. So the title in question is School DxD. This is a very popular ecchi series, so not only is it my intro, it's also a good one for you to... You've probably heard of this one before, so it's not like I'm just going to review some random, obscure ecchi thing that you've never heard of. You might be familiar, you might have read this yourself, so you can get a good feel for how I review things. So today we're going to take a look at Volume 1 of the manga, which includes the first 4 chapters of the series, and determining, based on the criteria of plot, dialogue, character design, art style, use of TNA content, and any miscellaneous criteria to determine if this is actual quality storytelling or just smut for the sake of smut. And not to say that smut for the sake of smut is bad, it's just like any other type of media, erotic media is not all created equally. So just because this series may classify a manga as simply horny doesn't mean it's bad per se, it is what it is. So let's get started with the plot.
Oh man, I hate when pornos try to have a story.
I think the best way to do this to start off is to read the back blurb on the manga itself. I've become a devil for a busty babe? When unpopular high schooler Issei Hyodo has a less than romantic encounter with his first ever girlfriend, the consequences are fatal. As he lies dying, who should come to his rescue but the prettiest girl in school, Rias Gremory? And the shocking truth she shares leaves Issei reeling. You've been reborn as a devil. Now you work for me. Issei's uproarious life as a devil's minion begins here. So I will say that the back blurb, unlike some that I've seen in ecchi manga, is not overtly sexual. I mean, yes, it does give you the description of Rias as a busty babe, but beyond that, this seems like a pretty fairly interesting story. At least it's what attracted me to go watch the series. The idea that he's killed and reborn in the service of someone who's actually like a devil, that's a fairly interesting concept, and not something that I would go immediately to, oh, this is the plot of a porno. But let's take a look further into the actual book and see if that holds up. Our story starts with Issei Hyodo going on a date, and the girl asking him if he would die for her. The girl then reveals herself to be a fallen angel and immediately attacks him. Issei gets impaled through the chest and is basically just bleeding out, and as he's dying, he thinks of the prettiest girl in school, Rias Gremory. That scene turns out to have been a recurring dream that Issei's been having, and we see him go off to school. Now, it's not until page 12 where we get our first hint of, what we typically consider ecchi, when Issei describes his desire to build a harem. Now, harem, both as a design and as a desire of the characters, is very common in ecchi. We go on to meet some of his friends and his classmates, we get a few shots of Rias, and then we see Issei and his friends watching porn at one of their houses. And at this point, we're about 20 pages in, and we still don't really know what's going on. As Issei leaves his friend's house, he is attacked by another fallen angel, and is once again badly injured, and is then again saved by Rias, who gives us more of the plot by saying that he is now one of her servants, and that this fallen angel needs to leave him alone as he is in service to the House of Gremory. Issei wakes up the next morning and finds Rias and him both naked in his bed. And through a series of awkward situations of like Issei's parents walking in on them and Rias giving a bit of exposition, we do learn that he is healed by her magic, and in order to do this transfer, she has to be naked. Again, here's where we're starting to get into the more like ecchi side of this. And basically the plot continues on that Issei is introduced to the members of the Occult Research Club, which is actually they're all devils in the service of Rias, who is a high-ranking member of House Gremory, one of the high-ranking devil houses in the war against the angels and the fallen angels and the devils. Issei has been turned into a devil, and in order to gain strength, he must fulfill contracts, and to do this, he will use magic to fulfill wishes of clients. And as he becomes stronger, he can even get more devils in his service, and this is his idea of how he is going to eventually get his harem. However, Issei is not very good at devil magic. So as Issei is now going about his new life as a devil, he meets a character that is, I'd call her either like a young cleric or I guess a nun in the church. And despite her being in service of supposedly the church and him being a devil, they do form, a nice platonic bond. But unbeknownst to her, this girl is actually in service of the fallen angels. Some things happen. Issei is attacked again. She more or less gives herself over to them to save him, and he vows to save her. And that is more or less the plot of the first volume. So, how does this plot stack up? Is it good, or is it just horny? This one's an easy call for me. I'm going to say this one is actually a very good plot. The first volume of this manga has an interesting premise. It sets up a world where a lot of different things can happen, and even gives the main character a lot of room for personal growth. It has a solid narrative that is not reliant on the character's horniness or perviness to be entertaining. This one has some solid storytelling, so as far as plot goes, that's a point for good. Now let's look at the dialogue. In my opinion, this manga has very good dialogue. What I mean by that is that it conveys the scenes and lets you know everything you need to know without being wordy or seeming forced. The way each character talks in regards to their personality seems like it's how they would actually talk. Nobody is being too over the top for the sake of laughs. No one is being overly lewd. And at the same time, too, all the dialogue conveys the plot to you without being wordy or getting boring. It's not like they're just exposition dumping on you. Basically, it gives you everything you need to know to be invested in the story without doing it in a way that makes you less engaged. Again, easy call on this one. I'm going to say dialogue, good. Now we're moving into character design. While we are only 4 chapters into this, I would say that the first 4 chapters do a very good job at showing you how interesting the characters of this series are going to potentially be. Main character Issei Hyodo, while we learned very early on that he is classified as a total pervert, you also see throughout the first 4 chapters that 1, he is willing to help people around him, he is willing to put himself in danger to help others. He might be a pervert, but he is also a very good guy. This alone is amazing because a lot of times when you have a pervy main character, the entirety of their personality is they're just very lewd and sex-obsessed, and while he is those things, he's the pervert with a heart of gold, and that's someone that you can kind of identify with, especially if you're reading ecchi manga. Because just because you're a pervert doesn't make you bad. His friends are shown to be way over-the-top perverts, which is how he's got this reputation for being a total creepazoid, and that makes sense. It's like, oh, if this guy's such a good guy, why isn't he more popular? Well, it's the people he associates with. We see some villains in the forms of fallen angels, and they're shown to be very malevolent, and it definitely makes you want to find out more about them. And we have the main girl, Rias Gremory herself, and she's shown to be extremely powerful, but also an extremely nice and caring person. While we haven't learned much about the club members at this point, each do have personalities and are actual characters that we get the sense will be fully fleshed out. They're not just, especially the female characters, aren't just anthropomorphic racks walking around, so that's very good. So, all in all, the creators of this series did not take the easy way out when they really could have just had it be like, look, boobs and devils, boobs and devils. No, they actually took the time to make a great world and great characters. So yeah, character design gets good. Next, let's take a look at the art style. The art in this series is beautiful and has so much great detail in it, and it really just helps you connect with and feel for the characters. So, art is it's very subjective, but I would say you'd be hard-pressed as a fan of manga to not find this art style to be very, very good. This one gets good. Now we get to use of TNA content, where we're basically asking, is it gratuitous? Does it work within the frame of the story? Or is it just tits for the sake of tits? And I'm going to say again on this one, the amount they give you, it works. Now, as I said earlier, I have seen the entirety of this anime, but I've only read the first volume of the manga, so I don't know if this changes as it goes on in the manga. There are some differences between anime and manga. So there's a chance that future volumes are just nudity city. At least in the first volume, it is very tasteful, and basically any of the naughty bits are actually covered up by fog and steam or just strategically placed locks of hair. But it still shows plenty of skin, and there even are, you get to see the girls with their nipples poking through their shirts. I mean, after all, this is an ecchi title. That kind of stuff is going to be in there, but it does not distract from the overall story. Like here we see a scene where the nun falls down and you get a panty shot, and Issei is conflicted because, he's a pervert and that's supposed to be really cool for him, but at the same time he's trying to not be that creep. So even when just showing us fan service, we do get a bit of character growth from the main character as we're learning who he is within the frame of the narrative. This is TNA done right, everybody. This gets good. So, the final category is the miscellaneous category, which just covers anything that we might have left unsaid that wasn't covered by any of the other 5 categories, but in this case, I don't really think there is anything. There's nothing out of the ordinary here that's either going to save or condemn this manga. So, for this one, for miscellaneous, we're just going to go ahead and give this series a neutral. So that brings our final count to 5 good, 1 neutral, 0 horny. Which means that in my 100% certified scientifically valid opinion, School DxD is a good ecchi manga. So yeah, School DxD is the perfect example of what you can do when you want to have a titillating story that is also a good, entertaining, well-crafted story. Sure, the babes are busty and the tits are poppin', but there is so much more beneath the surface of that to this story. If I had to sum up this story in a single, phrase, it's pervert finds a purpose. We see a guy go from only thinking about getting laid to having things in this world that matter to him. It has great dialogue, great character development, fantastic art, and modest use of the TNA content that overall crafts a story that, while yes, it can make you feel funny in certain parts, ultimately it is a story of a hero and his quest to become the harem king. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Ecchi. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have an ecchi manga you would like me to give my opinion on and review, please put that in the comments. If you want to be my favorite listener in the whole wide world, you'll click the links to my minis, maybe even buy one. Again, I use this channel as a way to advertise my custom miniatures business, and the more people that see these videos, the better a chance I have at selling some minis, and the more minis I sell, the more videos I make. Until next time, everybody, I'm Mr. Sean, this is Chimera Miniatures, and I hope you alpha great day and an even beta tomorrow. Bye-bye!